Thank you very much. Good morning, everybody, and thank you for this kind invitation to speak to you here. This is a privilege for me. First time really in Iceland. During the last 3 years, I have been invited to speak in many places in Europe, and I always ask my wife that, because she's already retired, that she will come with me. So normally when I say that I have to speak in Paris, she said no. And I said, London, not this time. Canada, no. But if you ever go to Iceland, I will go with you. So now we are here and really enjoying already. But we have some serious business to do before some vacation time here. So I will mainly tell you about what's Y-Foundation, what's this housing first approach that we have in Finland, and also a little bit about social housing in Finland, because I think it's extremely important and it's very much related to the issue of homelessness. I start with this picture because it reminds me of the old times. It's the beginning of my working career in the 80s for the city of Helsinki. This building that was the first and last shelter that the city of Helsinki has ever made. There were a lot of shelters and hostels, temporary accommodation before that, but during the 80s, it was in 83, I was told that I was responsible for the homeless services in Helsinki, and I was told that a very hard winter is coming and that we have urgently need new shelter places. And so I was commissioned to take care of having this new building, and we were very proud of it because we thought it's extremely good. It had 40 rooms. In each room there were only 2 men. That was a luxury at that time, only 2 men. And they had a refrigerator in the room so that they could keep their food stuff in the boat. They didn't have to hang them outside from the window in a plastic bag. So we thought that this was a luxury and it was the best possible place. And it was meant to be a temporary solution, maybe for a few winters. But as you can see from the text, it was closed in 2009. So this is exactly what happens with temporary accommodation, temporary solutions. They have a tendency to become more or less permanent. And in 2008, it was the worst place where nobody wanted to go voluntarily. Some people tell that homelessness in Finland has decreased. It has been going down for quite a long time, but especially since 2008, it has decreased more with the long-term homeless people. So according to the latest count, we have around 5,500 homeless persons in Finland, and most of them are living temporarily with friends and relatives. So there's a very low amount of people who are up sleeping. This is an estimate, although it seems to be very exact, 283, but it fluctuates a little bit. But basically, it has been going down as well as the number of people living in temporary accommodation in shelters and hostels. And there are some reasons for that, and it has a longer history because single homelessness has been going down since already from the 1987 when we did the first count. And my foundation was established in 1985, and we have been buying flats from the private market each year. This year we buy around 60 to 80 flats from the private market. And these flats are normally subleased, for example, to municipalities or NGOs to be used as rental flats for homeless people. So this is what my foundation was originally supposed to do. It was founded in 1985. The 5 biggest cities, Finnish Church, Red Cross, Association for Mental Health, the Association of Cities and Municipalities, the Finnish construction industry and Finnish construction trade union. So this is a very interesting combination. At the moment, the chairman of our board is also the chairman of the of the trade union of construction workers. And the name of the foundation comes from a Finnish word yksinäinen, which means single or a lonely person. And the idea was originally that the foundation would end the homelessness of single homeless persons by buying flats from the private market. But since then we have been doing a lot of other things because it's not only the only solution to buy flats from the private market. But at that time it was a very new thing because there was an urgent need for small apartments and they were not available in the social housing stock. We have around 150 employees because we already also take care of the real estate that we have of the buildings. But what's significant and very typical in the Finnish context is that we work in a very wide partnership between local authorities, meaning city councils, housing companies and other NGOs who work on a local level. And at the moment we have a little over 17,000 flats for the foundation. Over 10,000 are affordable social housing flats, and then we have these scattered housing flats from the private market and also some supported housing units for various special groups. This is a little bit too small, but this explains what kind of housing we have. Actually, it's very much the same as what I already told. We need money to do this. And in Finland we have this system where gambling and lottery is a national monopoly. So there's a state company that has all these machines and the money comes to this company. And then there's a department of the ministry, this funding center, which delivers part of this money to NGOs working in the social and health sector. Mainly they are development projects that they finance, but also they finance investments, which means that we can get a 50% grant for buying these flats from the general housing market. And this helps, of course, a lot because it makes it possible that the rent level in these apartments is very affordable. The other financing source is this Finnish Housing Finance and Development Center, which provides investment grants and low-rent loans for social housing building. And then, of course, we get loans from banks and other financial institutions. These were the sources of the money coming for the foundation last year. And this was a little bit exceptional year because we had this unsecured bond that we launched in September, where we gathered some market-based money, mainly to buy construction sites for social house building. This is not the only thing that we do, build and buy flats. We have in our foundation, we have now also housing advice service, which means that we have social workers who work very closely with tenants with the aim to prevent evictions, because it occasionally happens that people have rental arrears, and then the social workers make together with them payment plans, how they could solve these issues. And this is also related to the next one, this URAS project, which is our aim to provide pathways to employment for our tenants, both for our former homeless persons, homeless tenants, and also for people living in our social housing flats, which are mainly meant for people with low incomes and urgent housing needs. There's also nowadays, we have started an experiment in April where you can, if you have rental arrears, you can compensate that by doing some work for the foundation, because we have a lot of job to be done in the company. For example, taking care of the environment of the buildings and maintenance job effort and things like that. A lot of things that we can ask our tenants also if they want to get real work with real salary. That's the principle with this work. And then the last one, maybe, of course, we take care of also for this development of this Housing First work in Finland. We have a national network, and then we have also this Housing First Europe hub together with EANSA, where we have at the moment over 20 European organizations working together, arranging training, etc. I will tell at the last part of my presentation a little bit more about this hub. Now, a little bit more about the national program where I was involved right from the beginning. In 2008 we started this program with the great idea to halve the existing long-term homelessness and then to end it by 2015. We didn't completely succeed in, but there was a significant decrease in the homelessness numbers during this time. And there were two main elements in this national program. The other one was that we decided that we want to get rid of this temporary accommodation in shelters and hostels by converting the existing buildings to something new that was based on Housing First, own rental contract, but also support available in the buildings if that was needed. And then Housing First approach as a mainstream policy, as we understand it, because the curious thing was that when we prepared this program, we had this working group and we decided that we have to completely change the existing system, move from temporary accommodation to permanent housing, and then we came up with a wonderful name that we thought illustrates so well what we are doing, and we call it Asunto Ensin, Housing First. And then when we had written the report, I went to Google and realized that Housing First already existed. So it was a kind of lucky coincidence because there are so many similarities and the basic philosophy is very similar. But sometimes you can hear people saying that what we are doing is not the real Housing First because it's not, in all respects, it's not totally similar to the original US model. But what's also important is that when you start a national program like this, that you have very clear quantitative targets, what is needed to end homelessness, how many people need flats, how you are going to get the flats, how you are going to finance it, and how you are going to provide the support that people may need. So we had this goal of 2,500 new apartments because we thought, based on the results that we had, that this is the amount that's needed to end long-term homelessness. And by long-term homelessness, we mean people who have been living as homeless at least for 1 year or have been recurrently homeless during the last couple of years, and also who have very serious social and health issues, and for that reason they need intensive support. Because when we had previous national programs, it looked like there was always the same group that was left out of the solutions. There was always these people who didn't get the services that they needed to be able to live on their own. So during these 8 years that we had this national program running, we got over 3,500 new apartments, either bought them or built them. And what's even more significant was the number of new professional support workers in housing, social work as we call it. So this, if I think about in money terms, this money that was needed to hire new support workers was around 10 million euros from the state. It was a earmarked grant for these 10 cities that were involved in this program. It was 50% of the personal cost during this program period. It was a smaller amount of money compared to the total use of money, but it was the most important thing that we had with new social and health workers. This is the total amount of public investment in these homelessness action plans that we have now had. After these two power programs, we have had now a program that's been concentrating more on prevention. So it looks like it's a huge amount of money, but actually it doesn't cost more to build housing for homeless people than it costs to build normal, affordable social housing. And this is still the main part of the expenditure, to build new housing. And also, an important thing about this money is that when a former homeless person gets proper housing, flat of his own, his or her own, and even with support, the cost savings of society are significant. We had an estimation that when we compared the cost of services during when somebody is homeless and when he gets a flat of his own, the cost savings were at least 15,000 euros per one person per 1 year. And there are a lot of similar results from many other countries. So in these terms, I would say that it's not a money issue, and especially to think that in 2008 when this program was started, one of the most severe economic recessions hit Finland, so there was really a lack of money, but still it was wise to use the money, this money to get the homelessness situation reversed. Some more figures about what has happened during these years. In 2008 we had around almost 8,000, the total number of homeless people, and 3,500 long-term homeless people. Both numbers have been going down, but actually the general trend of homelessness going down has been mainly due to these measures that we have had for long-term homeless people. So they are very much related. Without these national programs, homelessness would have been going up in Finland, as it has been going up in most European countries at the moment. This picture maybe explains more clearly what has been the dramatic change in the housing options for homeless persons. So the hostels and shelter bed places in 2008 we still had almost 600 bed places in hostels and shelters, and now there's one service center for homeless people in Helsinki with 52 bed places. And the number of social housing apartments, of course, these are not all for homeless people, because they are meant for people with low incomes and urgent housing needs. But it's significant to have it on the same table, because I think that it's the most important preventive measure, most important structural means to prevent homelessness. And that's very easy to see if I compare the Finnish situation with many other European countries, especially United Kingdom or Ireland, where social housing production has been going down extremely rapidly during the last years. So these are very much related. And this drop in the number of hostel or shelter bed places has been replaced by supported housing and independent rental flats. These kind of housing flats that we have been buying. So basically there are different housing options for homeless person. It can be in supported housing or it can be in independent scattered housing flats. There's a very simple reason why we wanted to get rid of shelters and hostels. People living in shelters and hostels, they are still homeless. It's not a solution to homelessness. It's a temporary solution. It doesn't normally guarantee privacy, and also the professional help can be, at least in Finland, it was not very good. And there was two things that were done to make this change happen. First of all, there were state grants for renovation of these buildings, and the other one was more like a stick that, for example, the city of Helsinki told very clearly that after the renovations they are only buying services from service producers who work according to these housing first principles that we have been formulating before this program. And this is also important that most of these shelters and hostels, the temporary solutions to homelessness were available in Helsinki, which meant that people moved to Helsinki, especially from the neighboring cities, Espoo and Vantaa. And in this national program, there were clear goals for each of these cities, also for Espoo and Vantaa, that they should do the same thing. They should provide permanent housing solutions for homeless people, and they should cut down the number of temporary accommodation. And this has been happening, and it has changed the situation so that people are not anymore so much moving to the capital city of Helsinki, because there is not so much temporary accommodation available. And this temporary accommodation seems to be the thing that tempts people to move from at least this was what happened in Finland before this program. This is an example of this Väinölä building used to be a kind of hostel temporary accommodation for long-term homeless people in Espoo. This building was demolished already a few years ago because it was in such a bad shape. And on the same spot we have now this supported housing unit that Y-Foundation has built with 33 apartments. And we have leased it to the city of Espoo. They make rental contracts with tenants. And support is provided in this building by Salvation Army. There are 11 co-workers who work there in that building to provide personal support if that's needed. And what has happened with Salvation Army in Finland, I think this is one of the most remarkable things, because an organization that, at least in Finland, was known to be a very traditional organization, is nowadays one of the most progressive service providers of housing first in Finland. And they have a lot of work-related programs, work rehabilitation for their tenants and other activities. And it's quite amazing to see the change in the way how they work nowadays. This is one of the flats in the building. They are independent flats, so everybody has a big room, kitchen facilities, bathroom. It's a complete apartment, and you have your own rental contract. You can live there on your own, or you can take part in the common activities that are provided in the building. This is even more important because this was the last big shelter we had in Helsinki, opening in 1936. Before the renovation, they had 250 bed places. There were some one-person rooms. Normally there were four people sleeping in the same room before the renovation, and it was renovated to supported housing, so that now they have 81 independent rental apartments in the building with 88 residents, and on-site personnel by Salvation Army. And this is very much in the center of the city, and this was one of the reasons that we didn't want to demolish the buildings, because they were in a very central location, so it was more reasonable to renovate the existing buildings. Because these homeless people, they had used to live in the center of the city, so if we had a swimming spot, so it could be used. And this has also had a huge effect on the environment of the building. You can imagine that there were 250 people living in that building, and now there are 88, so many things are very much different in the surroundings. I'm not a researcher or a theoretician, but this is my understanding of how things can change. On the other end, there is managing homelessness, and this is something that we do by providing temporary accommodation. And if we want to end homelessness, it means that we have to provide permanent housing solutions. And Housing First is based on the idea of having permanent housing solutions. So if you want to make a change, this is the direction that you should move towards independent permanent housing. But so often I hear in Europe people saying that we need short-term solutions because we don't have yet the long-term solutions. But I think that the long-term solutions are something that have a long time effect, not something that are long time coming. So this is the this is the difference between different policies. I think that ending homelessness, this should be the goal. I think that we should be very clear that what we want to do is to end homelessness. This is something that should be self-evident that we speak about ending homelessness. And then I think that housing first, at least at the moment, is the mainstream policy that provides the best foundation for this kind of effort. Permanent housing solutions, but also alternative housing solutions. One size does not fit all, so it's not only scattered housing, but you need to have a different kind of arrangements. And it's not about housing, it's also about having this very tailor-made support if that's needed. But the funny thing is that I have noticed during the last years that for some reason to get money to provide the support seems to be so difficult, at least in Finland. It's more easy to get 100 million euros to build something than to get 10 million to provide the support for it. And still, the support is the most decisive thing after you have got a home of your own. But this is related also to total housing policy. So affordable social housing, this is the way how you can prevent homelessness for several reasons. And also, the last one that we have on this slide, the general housing benefit. This has huge importance, at least in Finland. At the moment, the expenditure of general housing benefit that comes from the state is over 2 billion euros. It's a huge amount of money. There are around 15% of the population that are getting housing benefit. But it helps, of course, people to keep the flats because in some areas, especially in the Helsinki metropolitan area, the rent level in the private market is very high. And if you don't have enough income, you can get the general housing benefit that covers maximum 80% of the rent. So this is crucially important element also preventing homelessness. For us, housing first means that it's a basic human and social right. Housing should be in normal surroundings, but it's always independent rental flat, your own rental contract. And normally for unlimited time, so they are not temporary flats, temporary rental contracts normally. But for us also the principle of normality is important, and I will explain what I mean by that. First, by comparing some of the principles of this using US model housing first pathways model, we have a little bit different understanding of the support, because in the US model they have this so-called ACT team, which means it's a multi-professional team of 10 people. But in Finland that would not be possible, so our model is more like, we would call it intensive case management, which means that you have a support worker, but you are expected to use the basic social and health services, which are, of course, they are very different compared to the US environment. So this is the principle of normality, that we are not creating some special systems for homeless people. When you get your rental flat of your own, you use the same services, you have the same rights and same obligations as everybody who has a rental flat of their own. And then in the US model, they are using the existing housing stock, but we have also been building new, and I think that housing first in an environment where you still have hostels and shelters as a main solution to homelessness, it's very different compared to the situation where permanent housing based on housing first is the main solution, where hostels or shelters are only a minor part of the system. And for that reason, one of the differences is also that in the US model, tenants pay 30% of their income for the rent. But in our system, you have the same rights and same obligations. So if the tenant is paying the rent and if he or she doesn't have the income, he can get the normal housing benefit as everybody else in the same situation. There are different forms of support, and in this shared housing, we aim to have one person support worker for 10 people living in shared housing. But this is not always the reality. And when we have problems, when we fail with housing, it's always related to the lack of support. That's my understanding of how the system works. So for that reason, the money spent on support is well spent and it's really needed. But in some of these supported housing units, there are very intensive support because people have multiple issues, addiction problems and mental health issues, and also quite a lot of somatic diseases that needs to be taken care of. In supported housing, we have a lot of work-related activities nowadays, especially Salvation Army, but also some other service providers are providing that kind of thing. But in scattered housing, there are a lot of issues which makes the providing support more complicated. And for that reason, there are some experiments at the moment, like detoxification at home, and also floating support team for people who have recurrent psychosis. But these are now more like experiments, they are not the mainstream solutions at the moment. And there's one special thing with this scattered housing that we have seen that there are former homeless people who fear the isolation and loneliness in this scattered housing. They seem to have a happy solution, a flat of their own, somewhere in the outskirts of the city where they have not lived before, they have no networks for support, and sometimes for this reason, these supported housing units can be a better solution for some homeless people. This is the big conclusion I have made during these years, that you can't have this housing first without having housing first. This is still the main thing, and actually all homeless people have their own histories, their own stories, and this is the only thing that's common to homeless people, that they don't have a home. And so we should start by providing the home. Could I have some water? I think that I'm running out of my voice. So I think that there are different ways how you can think about housing first. You can see it as a service model, and this is exactly the US model, very seen as a new way to work on an individual level. But for us, housing first has been a more systemic approach, and then it means a little bit different things. Some researchers say that no, housing first is a service model, and you have to speak about housing-led system. But I think it's extremely important to point out that housing first could be and should be a systemic approach, which means that for example, in prevention, you have to think about different things. You have to think about, based on the great principle of housing first, that you separate housing and services. So in prevention, this means that there are housing, but it also means that there are different forms of support in the form of housing benefit and in housing advisory services. Things that help people not to drop into homelessness. And in ending homelessness, you have different forms of housing, you have different forms of support, but the housing is based on permanent housing solutions, which minimizes the amount of shelter and hostel and that kind of temporary accommodation solutions. Because I think that when you really start to work with housing first, you have to do something with the other parts of the system. So this was the intended consequence of our introducing housing first, that temporary accommodation is more consciously going down. But during the, let's say, the last year, I have realized also that there was one other unintended consequence with this change to housing first, because we have been a little bit worried because we have seen in some municipalities that the numbers are actually going a little bit up, although the total number is going down. But in some cities you can see a trend that homelessness is increasing. And when we discussed with a lot of people, we realized that well, there was one structural thing that had happened, and this was the unintentional consequence of this systemic change, that some municipalities thought that, well, now we have this housing first system here, we have this supported housing, we don't need institutional care for people with substance abuse problems anymore, and they were cutting down the institutional care places too rapidly. But housing first, it's if you have a need for rehabilitation, the housing first is, you have to provide it. You have to have service opportunities for that. So you have to be careful because it can have effects on the other parts of the system as well. But I think that unless something is done with this temporary accommodation, the end result is that housing first becomes only one alternative service model among others. And then it's not changing the system. It's not anymore, the system is not anymore aiming to end homelessness when housing first is only one model among the others. Social housing in Finland means that it's housing meant for people with low incomes and urgent housing needs with affordable rent. And at the moment of the total housing stock, it's only 13%, but it still has a very important meaning. In new housing areas in the big cities, there's always a social mix that in the same area there are at least 25% affordable social housing, and the present government aims to increase it to 35%. Last year, it should be 2018, over 7,000 new units were started. And this is a system based on state guaranteed loans. So at the moment, okay, have you heard me at all? Good? Okay.
Is this for the records?
Okay. So at the moment when the interest rate level is so low, there's no state subsidies actually. There's only the state guarantee that provides the possibility to have cheap loans from the banks. So this is extremely cheap system for the state to provide affordable housing for people. And this affordable housing, social housing, is built on public land. It's also an element to make it affordable. But we see, or at least I see, that social housing is a necessary social infrastructure. It has such huge impact and importance. And you can understand the meaning of it most clearly when you are missing it. When you don't have it, then you understand that what we should have. And the one thing with the social housing in Finland is that the quality is very much the same as in other buildings. So one of these buildings is social housing, but it's not obvious right from the beginning that which one is affordable social housing. I can help you by saying it has these yellow parts in the middle of the building. But the playgrounds and areas are common to all these buildings. Some of these are private rental and some are private owned buildings in the same area. I found a very good support for my thinking about social housing when I saw this Australian research recently, which found that public housing can be a very strong protective factor reducing risk of homelessness. And in this study, which had a huge empirical data, approximately 73% of cases going into homelessness could have been avoided if the vulnerable were placed in provided public housing. And for that reason, this is something that we have to take care to provide enough affordable social housing. In Finland, the thing is that it's such a small country that construction industry, when the economy is going up and there's a huge demand on the private market, they don't want to build affordable social housing. But now when the economy is going down, construction companies are contacting us and they have a very urgent social consciousness that they want to build social housing now. So I have said that luckily we have had enough economic recessions, and for that reason we have a very good amount of affordable social housing. It's partly true also. This is I wanted to show you an example. This is a very special social housing building that we have in Helsinki. We have done it together with Elmo Foundation, which is a foundation of rock musicians. They had a radio station and they sold it, and they got a lot of money, and then they thought that what would they do with the money. And then they approached us and they said that so many of their members have so low incomes. Not everybody is a big star like your Jörg or other ones. So most have very low incomes, and for that reason they wanted to have social housing, and we made this building together. So there are now 74 apartments, 25 are reserved for musicians. So we have a house band of our own now, because we have these wonderful musicians there. And now we are planning another one in Tampere, a smaller one, for not only for musicians but also for other artists. Housing First Europe Hub, this is something that I thought that would be interesting also for you, because this is a network that we established together with FEANSA in 2016. When we had this Housing First Europe guide, which you can find online, we thought about how to continue the work, and then we decided that we would have this kind of network where we have organizations who want to promote housing first in their own countries. Basically, we have two coordinators. One is in Helsinki, where we have also the administration of this network, and the other one works for FEANSA in Brussels. We do a lot of things. First, these partners, of course, are committed to these housing first principles. We have training, research, evaluation, and for example, there has already been 3 train the trainers courses that we have held, where people have got the understanding of housing first so that they can teach other people in their own countries. And this has been rapidly increasing the number of people who have been in this training. The other founding partners, you can see a long list of these from different countries. There are some ministries even from Belgium, and one state organization from France. And now we have a new category because we got some administrative issues, because all the founding members were in the steering group, and we thought that if we get more founding members, we don't have big enough rooms to have a steering group meeting. So we have now an association category where we have, this is already a long list, old list. There's also the National Board of Social Services from Denmark, for example, in this. And also we have a member from Australia. That's caused a little bit discussion, because Australia is not exactly Europe, but then somebody said that they took part in the Eurovision Song Contest. So why wouldn't we have them also in the network? So these associate members pay a fee of 3,000 euros per 1 year, and they take care of their own expenses when people go, for example, for training. And the founding members pay 10,000 euros. And with this money we arrange the activities. So we are in the sense self-independent, that we are not depending on, for example, EU money or things like that at the moment. Actually, this report, which is the first one a survey of Housing First in Europe. It has been published today, and you can find it online from Housing First Europe Hub webpage. So it describes what kind of housing first we have at the moment in different countries in Europe, and it's a very good and interesting paper to read. This is the address where you can find this Housing First guide, and also from this page you can find that research report that has just been published. And also, my foundation, we have made a couple of publications. The Home of Your Own describes more in very practical detail this housing first system that we have in Finland. And this homelessness in 2030 describes 20 researchers' views how things are in 2030. So this book you can download for free from our webpage. I think I have said almost everything I have in mind. So, thank you.
Thank you so much, Juha, for this quite inspiring and very, I think it's almost uplifting for us because we can do so much, I think, because you have done it and you have, at least as you see it from the speech, you have done it and it worked. So no use for us to implement anything we haven't liked. You don't know anything about, you know about it. So we're going to open up for discussions. So Halldór will, he has the microphone over there, so please raise your hands. And
one here, one there, and one in the front.
Okay, I've raised you, okay. One microphone there, okay, so I see the hands. Anyone who wants to, okay, back there. And please introduce yourself and please, so we can then also use the... So there in the back, couple.
Hello, my name is Juha, and I'm a professor of social work at the University of Iceland. Thank you, Juha, for this very interesting presentation. We are sitting here and whispering, and we are a little bit curious about the staff. You talked about the training, and you mentioned some third sector organizations that are providing the staff. Could you elaborate a little bit more about that? Where are the people coming from, and how do you train them?
There has been a lot of different kind of training measures. When we did this change from temporary accommodation to permanent housing, there was, for example, to get this money from the state as a part grant, there was a requirement that people should have a basic vocational training in social and health. It's the same training that you, for example, basic nurses in Finland have. And this was important because before that in shelters and hostels there were people who were guards or with that kind of work title, so they didn't necessarily have any training in social and health issues. This was one part of it. But now we have had in this national network, which we have been running together with a few other NGOs, we have had a lot of training on special issues, trauma-related work, for example, and very much there's a whole variety of issues that we have a yearly program to arrange these training courses for people working with homeless people, and not only people working with NGOs. This training has been provided by NGOs, and it has been financed by this STEA, which is giving grants to NGOs working in the sector. but they have been open also for people working in the municipalities, because it seems, at least in Finland, people in municipalities have less possibilities to get extra training, and for that reason the NGO sector has taken care of building these systems. And now there are first experiments also to have this housing first related training in universities. So there are in some universities there are already courses when you train to become a social worker that housing first is included as one part of this training. So there's a huge demand. The training sessions, they are always full. There's a lot of demand from people working in the sector who want to get this training. But this Housing First Europe hub training is something that if Iceland decides to become part of the hub, so it's also possible. Actually, we got an inquiry recently from Perm, which is near Siberia in Russia. There was somebody who had read about this hub and this training and wanted to take part, and actually she's now taking part with her own expense in the next course that we have for this. So there's a huge interest and demand for that.
Hi, I'm Alexander Green. I'm on the Reykjavik City Welfare Council, and I have 3 questions. First of all, would it have to be Iceland that joins the hub, or could it be Reykjavik? Secondly, how do we deal with the not in my backyard problem when finding suitable locations for housing first new structures? And thirdly, has it been studied to what extent the accommodation of housing is driving the rising homelessness, wherein housing is also an investment and one that is expected to gain in value, perhaps faster than purchasing power grows, and where strong market forces have an interest in housing prices growing faster than purchasing power. And if so, do we know how to combat this?
You had excellent questions. The first one, it can as well be Reykjavik, the city of Reykjavik, no matter if only one kind of legal entity that takes care of providing the contribution. And the second question was about NIMBY. Well, we are very familiar with that. So it has happened several times, especially with the work we do in Y Foundation. You can imagine that when we buy a flat from the private market, probably in the same building, almost all people own their own flats. And then there comes one flat where there's a former homeless person who is a tenant of Y Foundation or some NGO working together with us. So there can be a lot of prejudices, and sometimes they can cause so much stress on the tenant that we have to move him or her to some other place, just to save them kind of from the pressure. This is a difficult thing, and the other one is of course when we plan to have a new housing unit. And this is, in some cities where you have more wealthy people, this kind of new projects cause a lot of resistance. Even we have now one in the pipeline, one project, one housing unit for young people with not even much support. Young people supported housing, but with not very intensive support, because that's not needed. And it has been now there has been complaints, so it has been in the process now for I think 3 years. But in the end, we will build it, no matter what. I think that this NIMBY question, with this self-renovation, it was very easy because in the beginning there was, in the newspaper, there was a map of Helsinki where all these new units were put on the map, so people could see that, well, there's one in my neighborhood, but actually there's no way to escape, because on the other parties there's always also one more unit. But there has been a special working method that we have been using, or the NGOs, especially the Helsinki Diakonis Institute, has developed what they call environmental work, which means that they start the process of discussing with the neighborhood very early when they have the plans, and then when it's ready and people move in, they try to have a regular contact. Not only that there are only complaints coming from the neighbors, but they are also very active towards the neighborhood, and they can have part of the personnel going around the buildings and looking that there are no problems, because in many cases when you have that kind of unit somewhere, all the problems in the area are somehow pointed out that they are caused by this unit. So for this reason, this environmental work has been critically important. In this vanilla unit I showed the picture for you, which we own. The tenants go around picking grasses in the neighborhood, so they have a very good relations with the neighborhood, and it's a little bit smaller unit. But it seems that the most important thing is that there's one telephone number where the worried neighbors can always call. So that seems to help a lot of issues, that they know that there's a number they can call, and that seems to help sometimes. This commodification of housing, of course, that has happened everywhere. It's happening in Finland. There are now international investors who have realized that Finland would be the place where they could park their extra money by buying flats. But this national policy where we have this at least 25% affordable social housing, this is something that we are relying very much, and it helps a lot to solve this issue. But you are right, this is a global phenomenon at the moment, and I think that the only way how you can fight against is that national governments take care of their responsibility to provide decent permanent housing for their citizens.
Pasi, voru spurningar? Gjörðu svo vel hérna á.
Hello. My name is Anna. I'm a healthcare nurse. I was wondering if you have a lot of volunteer workers in the support groups.
We don't have much voluntary work, or we have, but the system is always based on the principle that we have professional support workers. So if we have voluntary workers, as we have in some units, for example, the Helsinki Diakonis Institute has a lot of voluntary workers. They are not, anytime they are not replacing the existing professional support workers. But I think that also the peer support has been very important, and the involvement of the former homeless people, even in planning the new units that we have in many cities nowadays. Experts by experience, as we say, who are taking part in the groups where they plan what kind of solutions should be needed.
Yes. I would like to ask you one question actually, or at least get you, because when you were talking about the effect of housing first on other systems of did I understand you correctly, like when you started this program, or when you were like implementing new houses or flats, demand for rehab increased or decreased? How did this?
The demand for rehab decreased in institutional care, and that was in some municipalities made two rapid decisions to cut down the number of services in institutional care, because they were relying on the open care too much.
Okay.
And for that reason, it's very important to be careful that when you have a former homeless person who has had problems, well, in Finland you say with drinking. So when you get a flat, it doesn't solve this issue. we have seen many times that people diminish drinking because they want to keep the flat. But if you need rehabilitation, that should be provided, and you must have that kind of services available. So, but in the municipal decision making, it sometimes happens that when you see numbers going down, that there are less people going to institutional care, because people used to go to institutional care simply because they didn't have a flat. That was also partly a housing solution for them. As for some, it's to take some minor crime to get to prison as a housing solution. And for that reason, you have to be careful that you provide the services still.
My name is Ebba. Can you tell us a little bit more about what kind of activities as a work they get when they have housing? I mean, a part-time work. Who are you collaborating with?
Well, I know best what we do in my foundation. I think it was 3 years ago when we started this. I looked at the rules of the foundation, and it said that it's not only providing housing that's our job, we can do something else also to develop the well-being of our tenants. And then I said that we have a lot of work to be done in the foundation. Could we provide work opportunities for our tenants? So we have been advertising this possibility to tenants, and there are a lot of professionals, people who have work history in different professions that we can use. We have even one translator living in our flats who provides translation work for us sometimes. But the idea is that it's always normal work with normal salary. It can be temporary work. We have had some permanent work assignments also for our tenants in the foundation. Economic department, for example, real estate management. We have a group of tenants who take care of snow plowing in the winter time, because there are places where you can't go with machines, so they do it with the spades. So they have a WhatsApp group, and when snow is coming, they gather the group, and then we have an app that they use, and we know that they have been doing the work, and they get the salary paid for that work that they do. So it can be there are a huge amount of different work assignments that we can have, but we also try to find partners so that we could find work opportunities for our tenants also outside the foundation. We can't employ all our 17,000 tenants in the foundation, but a lot of possibilities. You need to have a little imagination to find the work. Of course, cleaning work is quite normal. So we have a couple of cleaning groups who take care of the buildings, our offices, and some other buildings. And we have a maintenance group where people, for example, when people move in and out, so they can help with these processes also.
Thank you for a very good lecture. My name is Vilborg. I'm working for one NGO here in Iceland. And as I understand you, it is mostly some NGO who's service providers. And I'm not some? Okay. I'm curious about how they finance themselves, because you said in your lecture it should be some permanently. They should have money for a long-term thinking, but not just like a one-year project or something like that. Because in Iceland we never do longer projects than for 1 year. So it's very difficult for NGO who is going to work seriously to work on that.
Yes, the support is provided mainly by NGOs, and the cities buy the services from NGOs. So they are the cities, municipalities that have the financial responsibility. They pay for the service. They may have their own support workers also in cities, but mainly there are some NGOs that have been specializing in this. But the cities mainly pay. They get a small grant depending on the level of the economy of the city from the state, but basically the responsibility is on the municipality. And also I think that it's important that when we had this national program, first for 4 years, then for 4 years, and now again for 4 years, we have had several governments, and all these have made a decision that they will continue this process. And now we have a present government who made a decision that, based on some ideas that we put forward, that we should halve the existing homelessness within the next 4 years and end it in the next 8 years. So this is the first time that there's in the government's program Housing First is mentioned. Although we have been doing it for 10 years, but now it's in the government's program even mentioned. So we are quite hopeful, but of course some money is also needed. But before finishing, I would like to point out one thing, that I'm speaking here, but there are a lot of people who are involved in this, so this is not a one-man show, but I think that probably the reason I'm speaking here is that the other people think that I'm not mixing things there if I'm somewhere else speaking about what they are doing.
Clever people. Já, ég held að við bara látum þetta gott heita. We will end this now and have a good cup of coffee and, you know, keep up the conversation out there. But we should be back here, let's say, because we're a little bit ahead of schedule, but let's say after 20 minutes, so 10:35, back here. See you, Dr.